Okay, good morning, everybody. I'm Mayor Pro Tem Cassandra Gandara, and Vice Chair of our Economic Policy Review Committee. It's May 20th, and I want to just give a shout out to Erica Souls. Today's her birthday, and to my parents, it's their anniversary. So blessings to everybody. I hope everybody is good on this call. And so we have a couple of items on the agenda. This is our second meeting of the PRC, and our first is to discuss the history of the economic development PRC, and Dr. Payeras, I believe.
Madam Chair, that one's going to be me.
I should have known that, Mandy Guz, because I came on whilst you were practicing. I'm so sorry, Mandy.
All right. So we did practice the share the screen. Let's see if the practice run, it worked then. Let's see if we can get it to work again. All right. So hopefully you can see my screen, and hopefully it's shared full size. Do we have success?
I'm going to have Adrian do that.
Yes. Great.
Adrian is the one that.
Okay, so let me get started with going through the history of our Policy Review Committee membership.
Madam Chair, Mayor Chair, I just got a call from Yvonne. She is waiting to be entered into the meeting. Can Adrian do that?
I actually don't show her on in the waiting room, so not sure. But
Oh, she doesn't. He doesn't see you in the
in.
waiting area, Yvonne. Yvonne?
Gillian, you're on, so we can hear you. Would you mute yourself?
Yeah.
All right, would you like me to go forward or would you like me to wait?
Let's go ahead and go forward, Mandy, as we are live.
Okay.
So
excellent. Okay, so to go through the history of our previous iteration of Policy Review Committee, I wanted to first talk about the membership that we had. We had a chair, which was our District 4 city councilor at the time was Jack Ekman. And then we had two city councilors that sat on the Policy Review Committee from District 5 and District 6. That was Councilor Flores and Councilor Sorg. And then the Business Development Administrator, that was myself as the liaison. We had several staff members that were on the committee and at every meeting. One was our Assistant City Manager. One was the policy analyst, and then we had the economic development director and deputy director and the community development director. Now, those were the staff members that were expected to be at every meeting for whatever the topics may be. We had a lot of other staff members that were in attendance to make presentations or to be available for questions. From the community, we had some membership. The first one was Kevin Boberg with the Borderplex Alliance. When he first started on the committee, he was the representative from New Mexico State University. And once he retired, we asked him to stay on because he did some work with the Borderplex Alliance, which is still important to economic development in our region. Davin Lopez, the president and CEO of Mesilla Valley Economic Development Alliance, was on the committee. Carrie Hamblin, the president of the Green Chamber of Commerce. Kathy Hansen from New Mexico State University came on after Dr. Boberg retired. Debbie Moore from the Greater Las Cruces Chamber of Commerce joined. Fred Owensby from Joni Anna Community College. We had Jake Redfern as a commercial realtor from NAI First Valley, and Curtis Roseman from the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce began on the committee, but he about 6 months into it had some other commitments and was unable to continue. But because we did have that slot, I thought it was important to highlight that we did have representation from all of the chambers. So what did we do in that policy review committee? Our first meeting was February the 14th, 2018. And so I'm just going to go through some of the things that we discussed, recommended, and passed. One of the first items we discussed were some updates and new incentive programs. The first was LEDA, which is the Local Economic Development Act. The city did already have a LEDA plan, but it had not been updated since 2014. And so we went through that. We made some updates. And we also added a GRIP, which is Gross Receipts Incentive Program, which we presented to the Policy Review Committee, and then we were recommended to take to City Council for approval. Those were approved in September of 2018 at City Council level. And at the same time, we created a new municipal code chapter for economic development. To date, we have not had any companies use the GRIP incentive. We've talked about it with a couple of companies, but those projects didn't necessarily feel that was the right fit for them. And then for LEDA, we've actually had 4 different LEDA projects since then, 3 of which were included the city and 1 which was state only funded. So those have all come to City Council for approval since then. One of the other things discussed was the bike share ordinance. The bike share ordinance went to our policy review committee, was recommended to take to council, and it did pass at council. The company that we had been talking about bringing a bike share program in didn't move forward. However, there was a pilot program at New Mexico State University, and which I think was successful. They had a committee and it hasn't moved forward, so we have not gone any further with that. However, the ordinance has passed and we do have something in code that allows for bike share. We had a presentation from the Chambers of Commerce, and one of the items that they talked about and asked for was a business boot camp series. And so the city took that on. We met with some business owners who helped us come up with a format that was the 10 most important things to know as running a business. And we did that over 3 different business boot camp sessions. We did the first, I think, in October 2018. Then we did one in spring and fall of 2019. And the final one we did, as we rolled that out, we continued to have conversations with the Chambers of Commerce. We had about between 30 and 50 businesses participate in each of those. And we felt like the information that was given and the type of program really made more sense to be directed and led by the Chambers of Commerce. So they're going to take that on and fit that into some of their existing programs. I know that the Green Chamber has a First Friday event where they help businesses with different items, and the Greater Chamber does some breakfast meetings where they talk about some of these similar topics, and they've also been doing, through the COVID-19 pandemic, Zoom Fridays where they address different issues and topics for businesses. So we started that, but we've transitioned that back into the responsibility of the Chambers of Commerce. At the committee, we also talked about outdoor recreation. We made a recommendation to put together a resolution to go to council to support outdoor recreation. That went to City Council, that passed. At the state level, we sent the city sent a resolution of support to the state. They did create an Office of Outdoor Rec. And then at the city level, we've actually hired an outdoor recreation coordinator in our Visit Las Cruces group. And so we've been moving forward with outdoor recreation initiatives. And then the comprehensive plan was undergoing an update, and the Economic Development Policy Review Committee made an appointee to the CPAC, which is the Comprehensive Action Committee. That appointee was George Vescovo, and so he helped move that forward, and Elevate was adopted at the City Council level earlier this year. The Policy Review Committee reviewed the strategic plans for both economic development and community development. We had several updates right as they first rolled out, and then as we moved forward, kind of an annual update. And both, I think, economic development and community development were one of the first. We were in the group of 3 that went first, so we got to learn that, and we used the committee as a sounding board for some feedback on how to make those work. We had meetings with Dell. So Dell for the first time came into Las Cruces in October 2018. They did some community meetings, and I believe that Mayor Pro Tem Councilor Gondara is still working with them and with Arrowhead on an initiative that came out of one of their roundtable discussions. We had a film incentive proposal that did not pass from the committee. We talked about doing a program similar to JTIP and Wage Plus, which is for film, it would have been FCAP and this Film Plus. But the discussion fell out that we didn't feel like the workforce, state workforce incentive was being used a lot in southern New Mexico, and it wasn't having, and so a supplement or complementary program to that would not have the impact that we were hoping for. We went back to the drawing board, and in the meantime, the state was considering the out of zone tax credit. And so instead of taking a city incentive forward, we took forward a resolution to City Council to approve supporting the out of zone, which at the state level did in fact pass. So there's an additional 5% tax credit available if films are filming and digital media is done outside of Albuquerque and Santa Fe areas. We had updates for both the West Mesa Industrial Park and the airport. Both of those are targeted areas that we're continuing to focus on. Earlier this year, towards the end of last year, we had a Market Street study done in the West Mesa Industrial Park to help us identify target industries and give us some implementation steps and next steps for how we revitalize and really focus on getting that area going. For the airport, we had updates from Andy. I think he's on the call and he can talk more about projects, but I know we've done a planning study to see what we do to move the City Council strategic plan forward in getting employments there. And our final meeting for Economic Development Policy Review was actually almost exactly a year later on February 13th, 2019. So we accomplished all of those things in a year span, which is really exciting. It was a very productive time. And so that kind of gives us the recap of the things that we went through and we accomplished in the history of the Policy Review Committee. And so that's all I have. If you've got questions, I welcome them.
And Madam Vice Chair, this is Griselda Martinez. And for the West Mesa Industrial Park and Airport updates, during the discussion for recommendations of future topics, those 2 are listed as future topics. So I think it's going to be very beneficial for us to have a full session to cover both of those in the near future.
Sounds good, Dr. Martinez. Thank you. Is there any questions from anybody on this? No? Do we have Madam Chair on the line yet? Doesn't look like it, huh? Okay. I have, let me see, oh, there she is. Let me see through my notes. Mandy, you mentioned the GRIP, which I know is an acronym. Could you go over that a little more for me? I'm unfamiliar.
Sure. It's a gross receipts incentive program, and it allows companies that meet certain criteria of a certain size or certain employment level, certain number of square footage. If they are, we don't have something like that, and they can show that they would be a draw for customers that are outside of the city limits. I think it's 45 or 50 miles. That want to come here or want to grow and expand, there's an opportunity, if they are required to put in certain infrastructure to make that happen, for them to show that the gross receipts that they bring into the city that we would not have gotten before, a portion of that can be dedicated to reimburse them for that public infrastructure they were required to put in. An example of how that might be used is if we were getting, a brand new type of company that brought that draw, but in order to start, they had to have some sort of change in a street intersection for them to come in. They could use, if they would have to show that they brought this gross receipts in, and over time that could be used to help them pay back the improvement they were required to do ahead of time.
Okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you. And to this date, I think I heard you say we have not had any people inquire and or move through this process where we've actually reimbursed them for their.
Right. We haven't had anyone take advantage of the program. We have talked to a couple of developers about it. And one in particular, it wasn't the right tool for what they needed. They're still moving forward with the development, but that's not, that wasn't the direction they chose to go.
So Mandy, how do we advertise or this particular program? How are we doing that for the GRIP and some of the other those things?
The GRIP specifically, it has a very clear targeted audience and the type of business that it would be eligible for it. So we've shared it with our commercial realtors and brokers as they're doing a lot of that recruitment work. It's been, and the GRIP there's a few other cities in New Mexico that have GRIP programs. But I think overall, and we've looked at that's how we came up with it and working through those. And I think even in the entire state, though several of the cities have these programs, it's probably been used less than 10 times. So it's not a program that's used often, but we wanted to have the tool available to help us.
So thank you, Mandy. So now I'm assuming that the GRIP is mirrored similarly as you've indicated to other communities that do have it within Mexico. So does the city outline what those guidelines are, or is it a state program that we have to follow, or can we change it to suit what we think we might need, or have other reasons? I know that's a bunch. Let me stop there. And then
so when we were reviewing the guidelines for GRIP, we have to be careful in New Mexico. As we all know, we have the anti-donation clause. And so we have to be careful to follow frameworks that are allowed. And so we do a lot of research when we're looking at different incentives to see what has been done, what is allowed, how do we be creative within those constraints. And so that's how we came across GRIP. We worked with our partners in New Mexico Economic Development Department to give us some ideas of what other areas are doing. LIDA is very specific in that the type of businesses that can come in. GRIP is a little bit more flexible as long as we meet certain parameters. What went the basis for looking at GRIP was we have nothing like on a retail kind of incentive side, and really GRIP is more focused on that. An example of something that we would love to get in Las Cruces that GRIP may be a good pull for would be like a Costco. It's something we don't already have in town. It's something that would draw in an audience from surrounding areas. And so that's kind of what we were looking for in this as an option.
great. Thank you. I guess I would like to see us highlight those programs a little more. I don't know if it needs to be like, and maybe it is on your economic development, like on Facebook and I know maybe Mavita and other places,
Mhm.
realtors, that they're using that as a tool. And maybe we need to have brochures, or I don't know, maybe we need to do like a media campaign about it specifically, highlighting, like, for example, there's a lot of people that would love to have a Costco here, right? And I'm not sure how the city gets tied into advocating for something like that. And obviously we have to be careful in terms of all the rules that, you know, are in place for that. But I'm thinking that maybe not enough people know about it, I guess. And it would be nice to have some sort of campaign to sort of educate folks about what you all are doing. Because I think you need to highlight all the wonderful things. I know that having the history of the PRC and all the work that you've done in just a year is really fantastic. And we should highlight that somewhere. Maybe it is, and I just don't go to that often enough. I mean, I know, and I was reminded, oh yeah, we did this and this, and obviously because things are coming to council, but it would be nice to do press releases, like, hey, the economic PRC is up and running again. Let's highlight what we've done in the last year. Those are all things I think that we should be really proud of, and that should be put on our website, on your website and Facebook, along with the other things I mentioned. Yes, Dr. Martinez. And actually, before Dr. Martinez gets on, you're on mute for 1, 2, let me hand over to our esteemed Madam Chair Flores is on the line now. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I think you're still on mute.
You're on mute. There you go.
You mean all my thank yous went for naught? I'm sorry. So thank you very much, Mandy, for your presentation. Your questions were excellent. And thank you, Madame Pro Tem Acting Chair of this committee. And yes, Dr. Martinez, you have your hand up. And so what so I'm really sorry, but I had this weird glitch where Annette couldn't help me and Adrian was struggling too. And so here I am, Johnny come lately. But it looks like we're going through the history of what the PRC has done in the year before last, because we've been dormant for about a year, and agree with getting the word out, and and it goes to just about all the work City Hall does and the departments do, and to let our city know, especially now, that it isn't all of a sudden as if we're coming around saying, oh yes, economic, recovery or economic development. It's like, no, this is an ongoing thing that it's actually institutionalized part of what city government does. So that's a good thing. So yes, Dr. Martinez.
Madam Chair, good morning, Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for the questions. As we continue to tagging along the comments from Madam Chair, we are actually right now in the process of revamping our website. And one of the specific areas that we're going to be highlighting is incentives available for businesses. And so that's something that will be highlighted, but I really appreciate the recommendations and ideas that you have for us to continue to share information. As Mandy mentioned, this information already Mavita has in our like the chambers of commerce whenever they start working with businesses as well. But I believe a media campaign to highlight incentives would be also good to have. And once we have the website, I think that's going to be a really helpful tool to continue to promote. And so and a press release on the PRC being revived, I think that's really it's sending sharing information proactively and highlighting what we accomplished in that 1 year. So we'll follow up with that. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. So we're discussing the history of the PRC. And so Mandy, you were the first one to speak on this, and you did a review of everything we've done. Great.
That's correct, Madam Chair.
Yeah, so I saw your license, your letters MLG on the license plate this morning.
Oh,
Andy Leatherwood Gus. And I thought, oh, Michelle Lujan Grisham, which is it? Maybe they were personalized. It wasn't either. Anyway.
I like that you thought of me first.
I did. Hey, Mandy's awesome. So are we done with the history, or is there anything else that people want to know, or any other presentation on the history?
Madam Chair, I am open for questions, but I think that was all we had.
Okay, that's all. Any questions, anybody? Suggestions?
Yes.
Oh, Mr. Sorg, excuse me, Counselor Mayor Pro Tem Emeritus Pro Tem. Yes, Mr. Sorg.
This is a question for Ms. Gus. Do you have a link that goes to your presentations that you're giving to us in these meetings, that we could look at the presentation ourselves to pick out, a slide that we want to look at a second time?
Counselor Sorg, I will share that with Cynthia Villanueva, who sent out the agenda minutes, and have her share it to the entire committee.
Okay, not necessarily this presentation, but future ones would be good. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm done.
That's great. And thank you, Mr. Sorg. Thank you, Councilor Sorg, Mayor Pro Tem Emeritus, all these titles. Thank you very much. And that makes me think about how we can then distribute it to people on our mailing list, like our constituents and our residents, and post it on Facebook or other social media that people use. But that would be good, because I think that people think that the job that we all do is when we show up at a meeting and that's it, and then everybody goes home. And no, there's a lot behind the scenes. So again, thank you. So are we ready to move on with the discussion on Economic Recovery Ad Hoc Committee? Who wants to lead that? Do you, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, did you want to address that? Or I have a preliminary.
Madam Chair?
Oh, is it Dr. Payares? Yes.
Yes, Madam Chair. Yes, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. How are you, Dr. Payares?
Doing excellent. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am in charge of leading the conversation for this, but if you want to have a commentary before that, go ahead.
Yeah, my only comment is that I know that this Friday on the special meeting agenda, we have the recovery, what is it, the local recovery council. And I don't know, I think Mayor Pro Tem is more familiar with that than I am. It's come up in the last couple of meetings, discussions. There was the state recovery council that the governor set up, but we don't have anybody from this part of, well, someone, I guess it was Javier Perea, who's going to be on that economic recovery council statewide, but that's it. We don't have anybody else. And so
actually, that's part of the discussion that we have today, Madam Chair. Yes.
We'll touch on that.
That's part of the discussion.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Payares. Thank you.
So with your permission, Madam Chair, I'm going to start sharing my screen now.
Yes, please. Thank you.
So what we have prepared for today is it's not a resolution for today. Today is a discussion item, but for next Friday, as you're mentioning, Madam Chair, it's going to be a resolution to establish the Las Cruces Economic Recovery Ad Hoc Board. And just as you discussed, this discussion came about in about 2 special meetings ago. And it was an item that City Council wanted to have indicated and wanted to address with regards to the response of the New Mexico Economic Recovery Council that happened for the state. So this is going to be projected to be on the Friday's agenda. And it is a request from City Council, and Madam Mayor Pro Tem was part of this discussion, as were you, along with some other suggestions. So the purpose of this ad hoc board is going to be to make specific recommendations to the mayor and city council on the strategies for gradually reopening the Las Cruces economy affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in a smart, safe, and effective manner that fits the needs of Las Cruces and that goes in alignment with the direction of New Mexico Economic Recovery Council. It shall be dissolved upon the full recovery of the economy in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Among the things that were suggested for the memberships, there was a good discussion on the May 8th session, special session, in which there was a discussion from different city councilors and different suggestions came to be. If I can recall properly, Councilor Bencomo suggested that she wanted to have someone from a union from the United Food and Commercial Workers. She also suggested having representation from local nonprofits. And I think then Madam Chair, it was Madam Mayor Pro Tem that suggested having healthcare workers, specifically naming a nurse, as well as people from workforce solutions and mental and behavioral health sector. I remember this request of this member was specifically coming from Madam Mayor Pro Tem. Then the discussion was to say having a business owners, each one representing each of the councilors' districts. So each one of the councilors, including the mayor, would be providing a suggestion of who from their own district they would suggest as a representative to this group. And then there was a person to be suggested from the Business Recovery Committee that was convened by the Las Cruces Greater Chamber of Commerce. So it is a bit kind of a simple presentation that I have today, because immediately after this, we go into discussion. One of the things that we were discussing and that Barbara suggested also was to point out that in the ad hoc board, the ad hoc board members are not required to meet the qualifications of being a resident of the city. So they could be located outside the city limits if it comes to be, since it is an ad hoc board. So with that, I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and we'll go straight to the discussion.
Dr. Paredes, are you asking for questions or is it an open
I'm ready
discussion?
for questions in your discussion.
So I have a question for you. Thank you so much for your presentation. When you say that the ad hoc committee board members do not have to be residents, is it not be residents of the city, but they have to have a business in the city, or how is that going to work? I mean, it has to be someone with an interest in Las Cruces, que no?
Yes, Madam Chair, but as an ad hoc board is established in a municipal code, it mentions in the scope that it is section 21071 that ad hoc boards are to be established by resolution of the city council, which is exactly what we're taking on Friday. And an ad hoc board members appointed by the city shall comply with division 1 of this article unless stated otherwise. Ad hoc board members are not required to meet the qualifications provisions in section 2-188 and 188 regarding membership mentions the idea of the residency. So they do not have to be residents of the city. They could have a business within the city limits, but they would not necessarily be residents within the city.
Okay, so then, so it would be open to anyone who wants to be a member, irrespective of not owning a business. It seems to me that you would want someone who has an interest, either be a resident because you're impacted, such as residents who have small businesses or employees. I know that Joanna wanted, Councilor Bencomo wanted the United Food Workers, UFC, and and you have CW, and then 501c3 is represented. And I don't know if anyone, what I'm thinking is that it'd be good to have people who are actually employees on that, you know, to have people who are affected by the fact, I mean, really, they're in the front lines of the economic spectrum. So is that a possibility to have people who are employees and not necessarily all those other qualifications? Or is that something that we would put in the resolution, or, do you know?
Madam Chair, as far as to my knowledge, the process will follow a similar process to the selection that we've had for other committees as we've had here. So they would have to apply, and then there would have to be a choosing criteria for the people that apply.
I see. So it's the criteria. The criteria can be set forth in seeking, putting out the call for applications. But then even so, there'll be some room, some wiggle room, not wiggle, yeah. There'll be some discretion, excuse me. The word is discretion.
That is correct, ma'am.
Okay, great.
That is
Thank
correct.
you, Dr. Payares. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? I'm sure. Oh, perdón. Dr. Martinez?
Madam Chair, Councillor Sort also has a question. Would you like to go first?
Well, I didn't see, I don't know, I didn't know. I'm sorry, mine doesn't keep a track of who put their hand up first, but yes.
I'll go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
For that question on membership, what we did was we capture from the discussion during that special meeting on May 8th, the people who were proposed, or the categories of membership. At this point, the resolution has been crafted, and I will defer to Assistant City Manager De Leon or Interim City Manager David Maestas for guidance on changes to the membership from the PRC with respect to the actual resolution that will be taken to City Council on Friday.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez. So, Mr. Maestas, would you like to address that? Are you David Maestas calling Doc? Okay, it looks like he's. So, Ms. De Leon, would you like to address that, or are you in a position to address that? All these people are missing in action.
Madam Chair, sorry.
Oh, there he is. Great, thank you.
Unfortunately, I got called out on a phone call with our police chief. So if you don't mind, I will need some backtrack on what the discussion was, and then I can attempt to address it at that point. So I apologize to make everybody have to go back to the discussion.
Oh, no, that's quite all right. Dr. Martinez, would you like to summarize or set up your question for Mr. Maestas?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. City Manager, the question is in changes in the recommended member categories that we have captured in the resolution for the Economic Recovery Council. The information that we have as crafted right now in the resolution was based on the discussion from special meeting of May 8th. And based on the current discussion here among the members of the Economic Development PRC, there is the recommendation to have a representation from workers, which may require some changes to the current resolution. So my question would be on how we could approach that given the review process of the resolution already taken place.
Very good. Thank you for that brief follow-up. Again, apologize to make you have to do that. Apologize to the committee for not being available at the time that the question came up. Because it's been advertised and it shows it with the makeup of the participants based on what had been brought up before, We will go through the discussion, through the presentation. When I say we, I believe Barbara De Leon will discuss that on Friday. Go through the resolution as the way it is written out. And then at that point, council will have the opportunity to say, we have a suggestion or we would like an amendment based on a specific change. And at that point, they can bring up the change. If we get a motion and a second from another counselor, then that change can be discussed and council has the ability to vote on that amendment, changing whatever participant that they recommend. If that's voted upon and then we get to the item, the resolution in its entirety at that point, and that gets approved, then the resolution will be approved with whatever amendment was approved, and that change will be effective and the committee will be structured to match the change that was brought forward. I hope that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, yes, thank you very much. It's very clear. Does anybody have any? Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
Madam
Meyer.
Chair.
You're welcome.
Yes, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, yes, Mr. Sorg, Counselor Sorg.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. A little bit of housekeeping right now. Madam Chair, if on the bottom of the window with the meeting here, there is a box there called participants. If you
Yes,
click on that, you will have the whole list of participants and you'll see who's raising their hand there.
thank you very much, Counselor Sorg, Mayor Pro Tem Emeritus, Counselor Sorg, whatever your name is. I have that little, I wish I could show it to you. I'm set up. I'm not used to looking at it, so my apologies.
Okay,
It's
understood.
all here, just, but thank you
Good
for your
excuse.
suggestion. Thank you.
My
And-
question is though, if Dr. Payara said, could please go to the slide that has the list of participants in the ad hoc committee? So we can reference that.
Is this the slide you're referring to, Councilor Sor?
That's precisely it. On the one where it has healthcare sector, a nurse, I don't know the rationale why a nurse was put in there in parentheses, but I distinctly remember my suggestion was a doctor, or even better yet, to have a professor at the Burrell College of Medicine that might have some good into this committee. I think a nurse is okay. My sister is a nurse. My mother was a nurse. I love nurses, but I think we ought to ask if there is a doctor that has a little more expertise in this kind of thing we're doing. They should be asked first, and yet if they can't or don't want to, then we can choose other healthcare sector individual. So that's just my suggestion for this part of the committee members, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sorg. Does anybody else have any questions? There was can you go back to that slide, Mr. Payatis, Dr. Payatis, or whoever's managing the slideshow?
Sure, ma'am. Give me 1 second. Here you go.
Yeah, I had a question about. Okay, so, my question is, it says workforce solutions. So are we talking about our local workforce solutions, the one that Sherry Thomas is on? Or are we talking about Bill McCamley's, or are we talking about Tracy Bryan?
Madam Chair, if I can recall properly from the discussion that was occurring on May the 8th, the suggestion was workforce solutions, and workforce solutions is the one from the state.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Payatis.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have questions? Let me go back. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, does it? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The rationale to answer Councilor Sorg's question and concern is from the healthcare sector, a nurse, like I'm thinking, there's an epidemiological, that's a mouthful, nurse there that we had conversations with from MMC that is very versed in COVID and hearing from their perspective, right, I think is important. And I'm also thinking that there are physicians and doctors that probably have a very different perspective, but I think your point in making sure that whoever we have has the knowledge, like for example, Dr. Landon, right? The epidemiologist that has been, in my opinion, amazing, right? And very fruitful conversations, alerting us, right? Understanding COVID, the practices, how they're keeping track of the data, what the data means. I think all those things are really important. So I would agree, Councillor Sorg, that whoever we pick from that healthcare sector also, and it may be, you know, hearing from our hospitals and the sectors that deal with like our federally qualified health centers. I mean, all these folks that would bring a different perspective, I think is what is important, but also having someone that has the expertise and as an epidemiologist is super important. So, because I think what's happening out there is a lot of these folks, I'm not suggesting, you know, a lot of these folks understand business, understand numbers, understand those things, but also I want to hear from somebody that has that expertise that could educate us through that process to understand, well, that might not quite work if we're doing this or promoting that, you know, one thing or another. So that for me is, I understand where you're coming from. Councillor Sorg, you make excellent points, and I would agree. And maybe it means someone else in addition to, you know, this nurse, and just reminding us that each of these folks have a different perspective coming in. Someone from a hospital setting versus someone who has a private practice.
Mayor Pro Tem, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with what you're saying there. I did not know there was a special nurse that had some epidemiologist information or expertise. I agree with that. No problem.
Sure. The other, I love the idea about the business owners. I think that's important. I'm wondering, so my concerns along the lines of just coming from different perspectives is as it relates to the business owners, I want to make sure that we have someone from the restaurant industry, someone from the nail salon and massage parlors, because they too have a perspective, especially that the movie theaters, people like that, that definitely have, I'm sure, their own perspective of what's happening that we may not necessarily have. So I want to have a really robust conversation Friday about who we actually pick, that we make sure that those sectors are represented. We each have them, right, in our districts, I would assume, and look at things very differently, and but also could give us so much information about truly what's happening with them. Let's see, business recovery. What else did I have? I'm looking through my notes. And I still think that, I know that the greater chambers are working together within their own group, but even today, I still feel there's a disconnect, right? To not have someone from that group represented. So it does say Business Recovery Committee convened by the Las Cruces Greater Chamber. I think that's important, but I also think we need to have a county commissioner plugged into this group. because whatever we do, and we will be affected about what's happening in the county, specifically down south. And I think that is super important to, if it means not only the commissioner who is specific to that area, or Mayor Perea maybe, but I think that ensuring that we have the connection and not the disconnect, and meaning that each of us are probably having conversations with each of these individuals separately, which it feels overwhelming. It's a lot of work. And I yet to hear from anybody from this Business Recovery Committee that I think, unless we have them in this particular group that we're trying to form, and very quickly, is concerning to me. And so along to piggyback on that, Dr. Payeras, how quickly can we get this together? It has been my experience that as we move through an application process, we don't have 30 days, right? Or 45 days, or I'm thinking that we can give you names very quickly so that if phone calls can be made. I just feel, I feel a need to expedite this. This isn't the same as some you know, committee that we've had where, you know, that's sort of indefinite and or working to meet a need very quickly, meet a need through a long period of time.
Madam Chair and Madam Mayor Pro Tem, the application process is that we're going to be sharing a link that actually our acting city clerk has been very, very helpful assisting us, Christine Rivera, and she created a link already. So we have the link already. So, but we first need to create the committee, which is happening by resolution on Friday. So after the ad hoc board has been created, we will be able to start, or actually you can also start suggesting to those members that you think might be good to apply for the board. And then there's going to be a process of review and then the appointment by, I think it was the mayor. I don't know if that answers your question, Councilor. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
It does to a degree. I'm glad that there's links and that we can get that done, but I feel like we need it a very short period of time so we can start meeting like next week, you know, end of next week and 2 weeks, just because I think time is of essence. And so I'm hoping that we come Friday with some names and that we've already had these conversations with folks so that we can get this up and running very, very quickly. It's, I think, you know, our small businesses and folks, to include our employees, are really struggling. And I feel like sooner rather than later is the best. Also, let me just put a plug into the nonprofits. I think, again, nonprofits have a very different,
I think I have a different perspective.
yeah, different perspective. And so I don't want to lose sight of that. And I don't want to dig in. I don't want to dig in on it either, but I also think that as long as we have the perspective and from maybe the 7 that we're all sort of communicating, okay, what does this look like? Who do they include? And it could very easily be nonprofit nail, where we don't have to change those that you have there listed on your PowerPoint. That's all I have. Thank you.
I do have a comment, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara. If we come with names to our meeting this coming Friday, doesn't that get in the way of the application process? Or when you say come with names this Friday, are you talking about the specific organizations or employers or the actual person who would be representing the different, like say the United Food Workers?
I think it could be all of those things that you just mentioned. I'm just more concerned about that you have to fill an I mean, we all know, because we all been asked, right, to fill different committees and such, how difficult of a process sometimes that is. So then we as counselors are doing a lot of work to talk to people and to get them to understand. Then they go to Christine and then they have to fill the application. And before you know it, it's 30, 60 days are left. We don't have 30, 60 days, in my opinion. I think we need to get something moving very quickly.
And so in order to get that going quickly, you mentioned 30 days. Is there something in the application process that requires a 30-day review period? Or do you know, Dr. Payares, or I don't know, Christine? I don't know if Christine.
Madam Chair, I'll defer that question to this Assistant City Manager or City Manager.
Oh, thank you.
Madam Chair, David Maestas here. I believe, and I don't mean to speak for Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, but I believe when she says 30 days, she's talking about sometimes it just takes that long. That's not the application process. It just takes a while, which she's true. Her statement is true in that when we have going back and forth between the applicant and the paperwork that needs to be filed and approved, sometimes that takes a while. Sometimes the applicant doesn't turn it in as quickly as we would expect, and then sometimes the return back to them is a little bit longer. What I could suggest on this one, and I know it's going to be additional work either for economic development or for Christine, but the process that Mayor Pro Tem Gandara was starting to talk about makes a lot of sense. Come Friday, we have approval for the resolution. It's in place. And if the counselors can get us the names of the appointees that day, I can ask that staff reaches out to these people, calls them up, and we can complete the application process with them during a phone call so that it gets taken care of at that moment rather than back and forth waiting on the forms to be filled out, sent in, waiting for people to get on the link. We can walk them through that and it goes a lot quicker. Then that will just leave us the time for the final appointment by the mayor at a council meeting, but that can happen at the next closest council meeting that comes up. So by doing that phone process and also by doing the electronic approvals, that can help it move along a lot quicker. One of the things that I think we were all talking before the meeting about what we've learned through this remote work is that there's several things we can do over the internet that help expedite, and we have been doing some electronic signatures or at least electronic approval processes, and that will help us decrease that time frame. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, if that sounds acceptable to you, I think that's a process we can do by essentially doing the phone conversation to fill out the application at that one moment in time rather than back and forth. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Maestas. Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, and Mr. Maestas, how would we, we would discuss the names after we pass the resolution, presumably pass the resolution to set up this recovery council, economic recovery council. At that point, we would discuss the people who are interested in this, or how exactly would that work? I mean, we would, since we don't have an application process in line or set up yet. I mean, it would be set up, it could be set up immediately after we pass the resolution. But I guess I'm being somewhat dense. How do we get to the meeting with a name if we haven't set up the process yet? You know, and make it fair so that people who are maybe chiming in for the first time for whatever reason want to be a part of this this council. And yet, you know, we're spouting off names already. So how do we broach that subject?
Madam Chair, that is a great question. What I propose to do for that is I am going to get with Christine Rivera and find out what would be the most expeditious process to have names available or have them ready. And with that, we can determine what would be the mechanism that we would have council go through for those names. But I don't know for sure what would be the quickest way right now for that. I would have to defer to her. I see that Barbara De Leon has raised her hand, so she might have some suggestions. If she does, I would very much be open to those to help us find out which would be the best process to follow. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Maestas. Yes, Ms. De Leon?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I just wanted to remind everyone, and I believe Dr. Payadas mentioned this, that we have already set up the link so that we can begin with the intake of applications. I think Interim City Manager David Maestas' suggestion is excellent for us to help those who may be nominated to complete that application process expeditiously. That way we could potentially bring it back to council at our next special meeting for the mayor to make the appointments, which could be the Friday following, the following Friday after this, or even Monday potentially, depending on how quickly that we could get the nominees to fill out the applications, or we could definitely assist with that. And we're ready to go in order to expedite that through an online manner.
Okay, so if everything goes smoothly on Friday, and the links that our city clerk Rivera has set up, all the information can be filled in at that point. People can go to those links immediately, and we can possibly get names over the weekend. And then we would submit those names at Monday's meeting. Is that what you're saying, Ms. De Leon?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's what I'm saying. We could potentially work towards a very quick turnaround process after the Friday discussion on nominations or particular names of folks who might be willing to serve on this ad hoc board.
Would it need to be an agenda item? Because I know that for regular council meetings, we always have a board appointments as part of the agenda.
Right, and that's what could potentially follow, Madam Chair, at the meeting on Monday or the following Friday.
Yeah, so yeah, it seems to me that we'd be on the safe side just to not to give the appearance of any kind of impropriety or the appearance of decisions made prior to everybody having the opportunity to apply and perhaps be a part of this very important council. Probably next Friday would, a week from this coming Friday, which would be the 29th of May, would probably be the soonest. I don't know. I suppose.
Madam Chair, David Maestas,
Thank you, Ms. De Leon.
And Madam Chair, David Maestas, again, you are correct. The earliest would probably be Friday, next special meeting. The advertisement that went out for the work session on Monday does not indicate board appointments. So we definitely would, that would give us the couple of days to make sure we have everybody on board, the appointees and their applications filled out. And if we could do it next Friday, that definitely falls in Mayor Pro Tem's suggested timeline of being ready by next week. We will have the committee set. So that's, I think that's a great goal. And I think that's what I will direct staff to shoot for. And we will work to have that list by Friday of next week.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maestas, and thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gandara, for that input. Thank you so much. And Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Emeritus, Councilor Sorg, do you still have your hand up, or did you forget to put your hand down? See, I'm looking at the little hand.
Yeah, you're just like the mayor.
Oh, please, no.
I just wanted to make a comment
What?
on past ad hoc committees that the city has had, where there isn't a city councilor as a member of it, and that's just fine. But city councilors probably should, I mean, it's up to each one to decide this, keep informed as to what this ad hoc committee is doing. And in the past, what we've done has been participating or being a participant in audience, or as a participant only, not as a member. We can attend these ad hoc committees meetings and just listen to what's going on. Not that we would necessarily add anything to it. during the meeting. So I just wanted to point.
And I think it's an excellent idea, Counselor Sorg. And I don't know what the rules are. I don't know if we could be ex officio members where we would be invited to join in on that meeting. Do you know, Mr. Maestas, or is this?
It would be just, Chair Lady, this would be just as a participant only. We wouldn't need to be ex officio. It doesn't need to be that formal.
Oh, okay. So, no, I'm just.
Participant.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sorg. But I'm just wondering, in what capacity, or just would we be invited, Mr. Maestas? Do you know, or does anybody know? I don't know if Ms. Rivera or our city attorney, either
Well,
one
these
of us.
aren't closed meetings, Madam Chair. These aren't closed meetings. They're open meetings. So
I know what you're saying, but I'm saying, for example, when we have our open meetings open to the world, they're not hooked up to participate as participants. So that's my question is, can we be invited as participants to be able to ask questions? Is that what you would like? Because I think that's an excellent idea.
perhaps, yeah, I'm not, what I would do personally would just listen. Questions would come later as things would be discussed in a but just to listen what people have to say. That's all.
Oh, so we would just, oh yeah, so we just go through YouTube or like any other meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sorg. But Mr. Maestas, I still have that question. Would we be able to be in? to
Yes,
those
thank
meetings?
you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the best thing to do to start off with, and I'm sure council is going to request this anyway, is we're going to have updates from the committee. They're definitely going to have to report back to council on what they're doing and what their progress is. Also, minutes from the meetings will be public, and any transmission that takes place can also be as well. So we will definitely be keeping council informed. You definitely will be able to see the items that are discussed and what recommendations the committee has in place. I think that's a good way to move forward so that the committee can do their work, but we are still informed of what they are doing. If
Excellent.
that's feasible, that's my recommendation. Thank you.
I think it's an excellent recommendation. Yes, I think it's good for them to do, they'll be able to do their work and have that autonomy. So, and we would still be informed that way. It does take a while to get minutes all the time though. I mean, but if we're watching, sitting in and watching it, I suppose we can do that if we don't have any other conflicts. Thank you, Mr. Maestas. And any other, I don't see anybody's hands up. Any other questions? Is there anything else we want to add to this discussion? Any comments? Dr. Payares, Dr. Martinez?
Madam
I
Chair.
think we're ready to move on to the next item on the agenda.
That's it. We only had 2 items on today's agenda. So, okay, excuse me, 2 items for discussion. So the next, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but I know that there were 4 agenda items, and then another one. I received an email yesterday or earlier today from someone who wants to add another agenda item, but we already have 4. That we had 6 agenda items proposed for today's meeting, and we discussed 2. I mean, we covered the 2 that were on the agenda. So what are the other items? Does anybody have the list in front of him or her?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Dr. Martinez.
if I may, for future discussion task list items, we have the following.
Yes.
Business assistance programs and partnerships, destination downtown program updates, economic development strategic plan updates, and Las Cruces International Airport / West Mesa Industrial Park updates. And I believe the item that was via email suggested by Councilor Sorg was economic gardening and application of those for City of Las Cruces.
Right. Okay. So we have 5 items for next week's, for our next meeting.
Madam Chair,
Is there any? Yes, just Dr. Martinez.
I had recommended in a previous communication if we could keep it up to 3 discussion items to keep the meeting for the 1.5 hours as suggested by you all. And I also recommended if we could keep the Las Cruces International Airport and West Mesa as one item, given all the items that we have to report back to you all. I'd like to have the opportunity to have a full session for those 2 items.
What was the other one? Destination Downtown?
We have Destination Downtown program updates, business assistance programs and partnerships, and economic development strategic plan updates.
Okay, but which are the 2 what are the 3 that you recommended, Dr. Martinez?
Depending on what
was the-
priorities you define as next, but if it's okay, we could have I would say for us to pair Destination Downtown program updates with the economic development strategic plan update for those 2 to go together. And then maybe the business assistance program and partnerships with the airport and West Mesa updates, if we could keep the discussion to the maybe 30 minutes each.
Okay, those yeah, I definitely would like to see the airport stay on there. I think it'd be great to have, in fact, I'd like reports from the airport maybe on a monthly basis, just in terms, because there's so much going on, and there's a lot of momentum there. And the West Mesa, that's coupled with the West Mesa Industrial. And then the economic gardening, that is, I understand, if I recall, Mr. Sorg, what you were saying was that this came out of that meeting or consortium, whatever you went to a few days ago, that if CARES comes through, there will be money to do this economic gardening, right?
Yeah, in fact, if I may explain the whole thing so everybody understands what I'm talking about here. Madam Chair, you remember a person that used to be on the staff of the city that we met at a new urbanism conference in Savannah, Georgia. His name was Brian Bird.
Yes, I heard of it.
Yeah, he contacted me.
Yeah, me too.
Interesting part of that is that he is stuck in Paraguay, South America. He went down there to visit his country that he was a Peace Corps volunteer in, and then the COVID-19 pandemic came out and he could not leave. He's been there 8 weeks. But he told me about a webinar that happened yesterday, put on by an organization called Strong Towns. They're connected to New Urbanism. And so I listened to, I didn't catch the whole thing, but I listened to most of it on my computer yesterday. And if I could just very briefly give you a little introduction to what they were talking about. And that has to do with the immediate response to the pandemic or the first 60 days. This deals with local governments. They are on the front lines of our nation's response to the combined public health and economic crisis created by COVID-19. Local leaders are being forced to adapt to new realities in an environment where the individuals, families, businesses, and civic organizations within the community are under extreme stress. Well, we all know that. I mean, that's something that we're here dealing with. But for the most part, local governments have found themselves on their own without financial support from the state or federal governments, spectators to the clumsy response. we make it through, to make it through this crisis with the least loss of life, to set ourselves up for strongest possible economic recovery, and to keep our community dialogue productive and healthy. Local government must fill the leadership void, as we all know here in Las Cruces. And it's time for local governments to be leaders in our communities, and so on and so forth. And that's what this whole thing that I sent to the whole council called the Local Leaders Toolkit for Strong Towns to Respond to the Pandemic. And that's where the economic gardening, what do you call it? A program that the economic gardening has comes in. And that's what I passed out to both, all three of us in the committee here, as well as the Dr. Martinez and Ms. Gus. So that I think we can put, looking at the amendment or the agenda, I think we can add that information into the economic development strategic plan updates coming up in the next couple of meetings.
In the next couple of meetings, well, if we do it with strategic plan is something we should definitely look at, because we have about a year and a half to see how we're coming along in all these areas that we've strategically planned for. Maybe
I strongly suggest we all review that.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. And I'm also thinking that maybe we can forward it to the economic recovery ad hoc council. Economic recovery ad hoc council. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
I think we should forward it to them. I mean, there's, I think it'd be very helpful for them to see what it is that we too are looking at, or that we could work on together. So thank you very much, Mr. Sorg, Councilor Sorg. So Dr. Martinez, perhaps the economic gardening in terms of the strategic plan is something that you actually combined with Destination Downtown. And I don't think that economic gardening is necessarily in our strategic plan per se. So I don't know if we
Madam
can.
Chair?
Yes, Dr. Martinez.
We have economic gardening. It's a strategy that is utilized for business development. And so we could tie it back into the strategic plan and future strategies through that. If you would like to pair the economic development strategic plan update with the, if we could call it local leaders toolkit in a more general way to cover all the different areas included in this strong towns, new urbanism website and other topics that may be of relevance.
That'd be wonderful. Let's do that. Let's do it that way. So, and so all, and then the airport and yes, okay. So can you read that, the three that we agreed upon, and we consolidated a couple, I think.
Yes, Madam Chair, for discussion items for the next economic development PRC, I have the economic development strategic plan updates, and we'll include the Destination Downtown program updates as part of that. And then as a second discussion item, we'll do the local leaders toolkit as summary of information from the recommendation that came from Councilor Sorg.
Okay, and what else was there? And the airport.
Madam Chair, if it's okay with you, I'd like to recommend the airport and the West Mesa to be deferred to our July meeting to be able to have a full-blown discussion on this. I'm sure the local leaders toolkit will be a rich discussion from what Councilor Sorg is
I see.
Discussing briefly.
Okay, so we'll have part of airports. Okay, great. Is there any other discussion, any other item on the agenda, Dr. Martinez?
Madam Chair, those would be the items that we have in the agenda. The next item would be the adjournment, and I can put together the agenda for June's meeting and send it to you for your final approval before publication.
Okay. And the next meeting would be, I don't know.
The next meeting following the agreed day of the month, it's the third Wednesday of the month, and June would be the June 17th from 10 to 11:30.
Thank you very much. Does anybody want to add a closing comment of any kind? If not, this meeting's adjourned. And thank you all very, very much. And don't forget to wear your mask. Bye-bye. Thank you,
Thank you all.
Dr. Payatis. Thank you, Mr. Messas. Thank you. Great
Bye.
meeting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mandy. Thank you, Barbara.